Welcome to the Lockbox, Lockbox!
Welcome to the Lockbox, the Lockbox! Hello again, guys. My name's Flame Fury. I'm joined by Tesseract.
Hello.
And Anher.
Howdy.
And we've got a very, very special show for you today. We are honoured and humbled to be joined by the dynamic duo of DCUO themselves. Jens Andersen, aka Spytle, Creative Director for DCUO, and Headstone, aka Mepps, Community Manager for DCUO.
Also aka Batmepps.
Hello guys, great to have you here.
Hello, good to be here.
Yep, thanks for having us.
I'm not going to be expected to sing or anything, am I?
Yeah, and Mepps is as well. If you can both do some Christmas carols or something later on.
Let's do that thing we practiced, okay?
Yeah. You go first.
Just kidding. Okay.
We never practice. We're an improvisational group. We just kind of go with it. You know, you give us a chord and we'll go.
It's all jazz up in here.
It's good to be in the lockbox. There you go.
Well, we'd just like to start off by asking a few simple questions about the new updates for the game. If Rob would like to start us off.
First, we have you've been tweeting today, Jens.
Oh yes.
Oh, those will make it all the way across the pond, huh?
The internet does that. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, we've been tweeting a little bit, some teasers of some of the DLC 9 PvE gear. I tweeted one out yesterday, which is based and inspired by a blue lantern. It has the symbol on it and everything. You know, we have that tier gear that you first kind of get when you are leveling up in the game. You know, you work your way up. Like maybe if you're a meta guy, you're getting Metallo. You know, and then if you're a villain on that side, you're going to end up getting, you know, the Mr. Freeze gear, but you work your way up to that second tier and you're usually getting something that looks like the armor from one of the mentors, whether it be Wonder Woman or Superman or Lex Luthor or Batman. Like the Spectre Batsuit, for instance, has the actual symbol on it. And as you all know, because everyone's always requesting, you know, iconic emblems going into the game, the only place you can really get those iconic emblems is on that iconic inspired gear. So people have been wanting Green Lantern equivalents to that gear for quite some time, and you know, we're going to do that with War of the Light Part 1. You're going to see Blue Lantern gear, and I tweeted that out yesterday. It has the Hope symbol on it and everything, and this afternoon I tweeted out the one that is inspired by the Green Lantern, so people are actually going to be able to get that chest piece and have a Green Lantern logo for their character.
I think people are going to love that.
They are.
So far, so good. So far, so good.
Oh yeah, the hunger was definitely there for that.
Yeah, I think they look really cool too. And you know, a lot of people have been asking for more of a flex suit kind of inspired styles. And so we took that into account. And of course, you know, we have a game that, you know, has a shoulder, you know, piece that you need to put on, and gloves and boots and belts and all this kind of stuff. So we do have to kind of, you know, work these flex suit designs into things that also have armor pieces on them as well, like more prominent physical pieces on the shoulders and things. You, of course, for the set, you know, you don't have to wear all that. You can hide it or leave it off and not use it and just use the chest piece. But those are part of the set as well. So these are kind of a really cool mix and a step in that direction of getting toward those slimmer styles with more of the kind of, you know, musculature and body contours coming through and shining through, and going with more design element and material changes to really accentuate the differences. In these particular styles, when you look at the two that I tweeted out, you can see how they harmonize with each other, and they can be mixed and matched. So if you like the boots from the Blue Lantern and the you know, the pants, the legs from the Blue Lantern, you can put those on with the Green Lantern top, tint them any way you want. The symbols must stay the color they are. Like DC wouldn't let us, you know, have a yellow Green Lantern symbol, so that will always be green. But all of the other colors and things on it, you can tint and theme out toward your character. So it should be really great. There might be a few more being tweeted out. We'll see. Could be some others.
We're all intrigued now. It's interesting you say about the emblem colours. I can't think of any other piece in the game that's got a colour that's like hard attached to the item. But I can obviously see why they would do that for the Green Lantern or any of the lanterns. They're so associated with their colours.
Well, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I'm pretty sure, like the Spectre Batsuit, can you actually tint the bat symbol? I'm not sure that you can.
No.
Yeah, so that would be an example. I know I guess black is a color too, right? So it's definitely, you can't tint it away from the black.
What does this mean for the auras in the game? Are we eventually going to see a green aura? I mean, that's something else that a lot of people have been asking for.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that right now. I don't want to confirm or deny. I have my own personal feelings about that. It was actually one of those things like in the beginning where, the Green Lantern lore in general, when we first launched the game, was really somebody over at DC's baby at that point. And they were very, very hyper protective of the use of that canon, that lore, those costumes, those characters. There was a huge resurgence of Green Lantern, lore and storytelling going on in the books at that time. I think that they've relaxed on that a little bit. As you can see, we're doing a lot more Lantern content. We have these iconic suits coming in the game. With the advent of certain the light powers coming in and other aura colors that are coming in. It's hard for me to comment on this without saying too much, but Mepps, we're clear to kind of talk fully about this, right? At this point, we're good to go.
Anything that you would be okay mentioning to press, you can say to these guys.
All right, perfect. So let me just spill it right now then. So I would hope that we could get something like that in soon, specifically the green aura. And the reason for that is we already have a red aura in the game, and I'll confirm right now that the DLC 9 powers are rage powers. So you're going to be able to have a rage character in the game, and that's obviously going to be red and themed red. And so you have a red aura. So I see no reason at this point why we shouldn't be able to go back and revisit that with DC and get a green aura in the game. However, that's not our call. I believe we would like to do that if we can actually get that in for the players. And let's see what they have to say now that we have the precedent of the red powers and the red aura in the game.
That is fantastic news. I can really see an influx of people changing back to Green Lantern again now.
It's a fantastic possibility.
It's definitely something people ask for all the time. So
yeah, certainly not a promise at this point because it's not entirely up to us. But I think it's something we'll revisit again and ask them to say, hey, we'd really like to do this, or players would really like this. Really shouldn't be any harm in doing this at this point. I mean, you can even imagine nature characters that would want a green aura around them. Yeah. Certainly the light characters on the hero side would be interested in that. So I see no harm in it. But again, I'm just using the license at their discretion. So we will see what they say.
It's definitely a lot stronger response than when this question has been asked in the past, though, and you may say there's even some hope for the future.
Yes.
We can play that game.
Yes. Well, I know that people were theorizing that the lantern power we would be adding for DLC 9 would probably follow some kind of hybrid that we did with Fight for the Light, with the heroes wielding green and will power and the villains wielding fear, and that yellow version of the hard light, and that we would do like blue for heroes and red for villains. But we really looked at that, and first and foremost, I mean, we definitely do some we have some constraints, some things that we put on there to make players actually have these lantern powers and these hard light constructs, but that rationalize the fact that they are limited. Like there's no way to plug the computer into players' brains at this point and allow them to actually use a power ring the way it should be, which is, I want it to be themed like this, and I'm a sports guy, so I want all my constructs to be sports-like. We just don't have the memory, the bandwidth, or the resources to kind of make that level of a power ring experience come to fruition. So we, put these reservist rings in. They're pre-programmed with certain kind of, hard light constructs. This is a very kind of a theme and a thing that we did on purpose so that we could rationalize and justify the limitations of doing this in the game when players have created their own character and have one of these rings. And we're going to do the same thing here with the red rings as well. It's kind of more of a reservist status ring. And given that we were looking at doing the blue and the red and doing it like the hard light, but first of all, there's two things to keep in mind. Number one is there's only so much memory to go around on the PS3, and we still are on the PS3. Just because we launched on the PS4 and we have the PC, platform doesn't mean we don't have to pay attention to the PS3 and the constraints that we have there on a resource front. So it's very expensive for us to add a power into the game, and we are pretty much right up against it right now when it comes to that kind of additions. I'm not saying there won't be more in the future, but we're going to have to get really clever about how we do it. Unless some other things kind of change, which I don't foresee them doing right now. PS3 is very, very strong platform for us. We can plan on supporting it for a very long time. The other thing was too, rage powers, the red light has much less constraints on it in terms of what it does in the IP. Blue rings have all kinds of powers that directly affect green and yellow. So blue characters, if we were going to try and represent that in the game, are going to be boosting Green Lanterns and draining Sinestro Corps guys. These are just things that just unbalance the game in a huge way. They're very, very hard concepts to even try and wrangle around and make work. So it's kind of a little radioactive for us to try and go there and touch that. So when we were really thinking about it, and in the canon and the comics at the time, you started seeing characters like Rancor, who is a Red Lantern character, and he's actually in control of his faculties and his mind, and he can actually kind of wield the red light of rage and make moral choices for good. And Guy Gardner is the prime example of that, right? Like he actually gets a red ring and becomes a Red Lantern, but he's still Guy. He's still a good guy. He has the ability to harness that. So Guy Gardner was, like I said, that inspiration for us there. It was really the kind of avenue we thought we would explore when we were thinking about, all right, well, what if we have a unique power for one faction. We have another unique power that reflects that on the other side for the other faction. What if we did one that was more neutral? And you know what? The Reds are kind of evolving in that direction in the comics. You see more and more how a few of them are actually the key characters are actually starting to get their reason back. And to me, a Red Lantern is not necessarily evil. They're just really angry. And they commit what on the outside looks like evil acts for sure, But if they show up on Earth because they sense somebody's rage and anger because a horrible assault has happened and somebody's been terribly, injured or traumatized, and bam, this Red Lantern shows up. Unfortunately, they take that anger way too far, right? They'll murder someone, rip their arms off, rip their heart out, bathe them in this terrible plasma, and burn them to a cinder and a crisp. Now, that was a terrible, terrible thing to witness out of context. Even in context. But if you really think about it, there's a possibility that action actually happened because they were doing something righteous, right? In fact, Atrocitus himself, I always look at him as a character who has actually committed some very heinous acts, but he's done so he was born out of this righteous fury. His whole planet and his entire people, his wife, his children were annihilated because of the actions of the Guardians of the Universe, which is why he has such a beef with them and the Green Lantern Corps. In a lot of ways, it's justified. Now, in many of their actions, though, are where they take it, obviously can be looked at as villainous. And I think primarily these guys are antagonists for the most part. But given that there are special key characters, very strong-willed people, or very key important characters in the canon that can overcome that mindless rage and actually rise above and make decisions even though they're wielding that power that could be morally good. I looked at that And then we looked at that as a team and we said, hey, you know what? Our players are special. They are that kind of caliber. They are the guys, the Bleezes, the Atrocituses, the characters that are rising above and becoming special and unique in the universe. They would have control of their minds and be able to make those kind of decisions. So why don't we allow this to happen on both sides and just treat this as we would fire or ice or mental and allow all factions to play it? And DC agreed with us. They said, you know what, you're right. That's where the kind of characters are evolving right now. Certainly there are examples of villains, but certainly there are examples of heroes among the Red Lanterns who use that power as well. So that's, I wouldn't say there are heroes among the Red Lanterns, but you know what I mean. There are heroes, heroic figures who have used the red light of rage and had a red power ring. So that's kind of where we went with it and why we chose to, you know, go that direction and save us some memory for maybe another power in the future as well. So we'll see.
On the topic of the Red Lantern, are you able to tell us a bit about the mechanics of how it will work? So the current green one, for example, uses part-like constructs to regenerate power and do damage, mainly on a precision basis. How is the Rage going to work?
So the Rage power has the DPS role, obviously, but it also has the tanking role. It is a tank power, and it has a brand new mechanic of how it works. It'll still taunt and do things like that, like the other tanking powers do. So you'll need to be using your powers to taunt the enemies to keep them interested in you if you're the primary tank and that's your role in the group. But it also has a new mechanic. It doesn't really rely on shields, much like Earth or Ice do. It relies on this new mechanic called Rage Crash. And what Rage Crash is, it's really cool. I think you're gonna like it. What it does is you activate these abilities and it puts you into a state of rage that keeps increasing. And every time someone punches you in the face and it deals damage to you, you get so angry that you heal yourself that damage back. Okay, so every point of damage you're taking, you're healing right back. Now that damage you've healed back, right, is, so to speak, temporary, okay? It's being tracked in a separate pool now. So your health bar is really not moving that much because as long as you're keeping your rage up, you're sort of deferring that damage into this other pool. You're actually taking it, but it's getting healed back. And that healed back state, or that healed back pool, is actually being tracked. And if you do what's called Rage Crash, you don't keep your rage going. You allow your rage to subside. All of that temporary bonus health goes away instantly. You just crash down to what your normal health would have been had you taken all that damage. And so it's really all about your timing and your tactics, your strategy of trying to keep your rage up and keep those combos and powers rolling so you avoid crashing. Then we have certain abilities that allow you to cleanse that crash, or you can also, if you don't and you screw up and that big hit happens, you know, that's when your healer needs to step in and kind of save your bacon until you get angry again.
So it's more along the lines of the fire tanking power set, where it's very much the amount of health that you've got.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, because the fire tanking power sets are really relying on you doing the damage, right? And so damage that you're dealing out is healing back. This is the damage you're taking is healing you.
That definitely sounds very unique and interesting.
It certainly is unique. There is not another power mechanic like this in the game.
Are healers going to be able to heal that deficit whilst you haven't taken it?
If we get the balance right, we should. Yes, you should. But, you know, getting Rage Crash is dangerous. It has a lot of benefits because you literally can, you literally can just walk through that damage. But if you do not time your abilities right, if you do not get the absorption that allows you to kind of, get rid of that damage deficit that's about to crash, you can have a big spike. But so it's hard to describe. I think the best thing to do would be when we do a live stream that actually demonstrates the rage powers, and Spord, Jesse Scott, who's the systems designer that actually put it all together, gets on there. He can explain it in detail and show everybody exactly what it does and how it works. But that's sort of in lieu of shields or in lieu of damage, basically healing off damage that you're dealing people. This actually is based off the damage that you're taking, and then you can cleanse that. I mean, you can basically keep reapplying that rage, and after a time, that damage that you've accumulated, that you're in deficit to, that you haven't seen yet, it will fade. So it's not like at the end of a fight, your tank's going to fall over and die all the time. That's not how it will work. You do have the ability to mitigate that rage crash. But the best thing when you're in combat is to just keep it rolling, keep it moving, keep it going, keep that rage up, make sure you're not crashing. Oh, you've gotten interrupted. It's a possibility that you might see a crash in a second if you don't get your breakout right, or if you don't get that next power off. Your healer is going to have to step in. But it's really no different than the Earth tank is unable to get their shield up because they got knocked down. All of a sudden, they're not blocking. There's no shield up. They can get spiky too. So it's an interesting way of tanking. It's totally new and unique. The DPS side of it, that's a good question. I've only done the tanking part. I'm gonna have to double check on whether it's precision or might based at that point. I forget. I think it might be might based, but I'm not 100% sure. I was just saying that there will be some constructs involved in there too. Some of the Red Lanterns do have the ability to create constructs in a limited form. We've certainly seen that in different parts of the media too. Like I know in the animated series, he definitely used a lot more constructs than he does in the comics. Speaking of Atrocitus, so there are a few in there really cool looking attacks that have to do with spikes and chains to pull people towards you, that are made out of red light constructs, big huge maces that crash down over people's heads, things like that. You'll see like chains with blades on the end that they do spinning moves, and it's really vicious and very angry looking for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You'll see the constructs, you'll see a lot of the plasma, the blood, kind of flame attacks that they do, and just in general some luminescent light blasts and things like that. So all three of those are represented within the power itself.
Awesome. We'll talk more about War of the Light as a whole in a bit, but if I could change it up a bit and just talk about Game Update 31, all the graphical changes in the PlayStation 4 launch which coincided. How has that impacted you guys at the moment? Are you breathing a sigh of relief now that it's out? You've got a few issues to sort, but are you happy with it?
It's bittersweet. We're certainly happy that we got out there for PS4 on launch. I think that's the sweet part. The bitter part is there were some things that we had to adjust to last minute to get it out there, and we definitely had a couple of bugs that got by us, which really. So it's hard to say, yeah, we're so happy. I mean, we're happy, but we're really not happy yet because we just haven't been able to resolve a couple of the issues that are going on there. The major one being, the grouping and queuing issue that's happening right now. And it's just so frustrating for us to watch that happen on live right now, and it's how it's affecting the PS4 community and the people who have come over either from the PS3 and are already doing the end game content and trying to queue up, and it's just so frustrating for them. It just kills us, and so we feel like all that hard work that we did, even though we breathed a sigh of relief once we realized that there were a couple of problems like that and how long it was going to take us to actually resolve them due to finding the problem, fixing the problem, and then getting that problem through approval and then out to our players. It kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit when it comes to celebrating the accomplishment. That being said, so I want to acknowledge that because, it'd be very insensitive of me to say, yeah, we're super psyched. It's awesome. We're so happy and we're breathing a sigh of relief. We're really not. Because we're still trying to address some of the issues that are affecting players on the PS4, and it is one of our number one priorities right now in-house. But we still have to meet our commitments to getting DLC 9 out, Game Update 32. In some areas we just have our feet taped to the bicycle when it comes on some of these deliverables, and when something unexpected like this happens, it just really throws a wrench in the works. So, we're super psyched about the PS4. I really enjoy playing it. I've been streaming a lot. That's my favorite part of it right now as a player, is to be able to just hit that share button and, hook up to the DC Universe Online channel. Mepps is very kind to let me tap into that audience instead of having to go use my own channel. So I'll get some people on there watching me play and leveling my new character, and it's been a lot of fun. And oh man, it plays like a dream on that system compared to the PS3. It's just really smooth, not a lot of client lag problems, certainly no memory crashes and things like that. It's awesome. So I'm really proud of the team and the work they did on it. It's just, you can make this amazing 99-yard, run from, a kickoff return. But if you fumble on the 1-yard line, that's the only thing that people really remember. So right now we're trying to recover the ball and just cover it up and get back on track.
And hopefully GU32, Game Update 32, has a ton of those fixes and the major fixes resolved. So once that gets out, we should be in much better shape, maybe able to celebrate a little bit more.
Awesome. And speaking of Game Update 32, which is currently on PC test, it introduces quite a lot of changes. One of which I wanted to bring up, it's been discussed to death, I think, at the moment, the changes to Nexus of Reality and Paradox Wave. The update states that it's been altered to be normal. A few people are wondering why that was. Well, why was no novice version introduced for people who were struggling with the instance? Are you able to kind of outline the decisions behind that?
Sure. There's a lot of reasons for that. Well, first of all, when the DLC 7 stuff first came out, it was at a certain level of difficulty. And I don't mean just the hard versus normal versus novice and all that kind of stuff, but literally that there was it was set at a certain level. Now, also, the raids that you normally see are at the normal level. We added this hard tier of stats to it, literally bumped everything up like 50% damage output, the durability of the NPCs, everything just got tougher. And when we did that, then we were asked to crank it up 4 levels where it was, because the goal was, based on community requests, was to make it like just awfully hard, like crazy hard, and give us a challenge and all that kind of stuff. And so we did that. And then when we were trying to, retweak it, and people were finding it just too hard, I mean, it was really causing people to just, kind of get stunned by the difficulty of it. They just didn't know how to handle it at all. And it was a great departure from the normal difficulty that we had for the raids. Like, it was way harder than the normal raids. Normal raids look like novice raids compared to what we had Paradox Wave and Nexus of Reality tuned to when they first came out. So what we did was, when we said we were going to make it easier at SOE Live, because we had so many responses that it wasn't difficult, or it was too difficult, all we did was reduce the level of the raids. So that went out first. So, and we tweaked some of the mechanics, like the timing windows on Lex's, big AE that would just be one-shotting people on the PS3 because they couldn't react to it in time due to performance issues, and it couldn't really time the animation or even see the effect, and they'd just be dead and they didn't know what was going on. So we eased up on the timing of that and reduced the levels, but we kept the stat tier at hard. So it didn't really reduce it that much, only a little. People were still having trouble with it. So I'm glad you asked this question, because this will give me an opportunity to really set the record straight about what's happening with it right now. So what we did was, we decided that we were going to get rid of this hard stat tier off of it and set it back down to normal. So that's the patch note that you're seeing right now when it says, oh, this has been turned to normal difficulty. That's what that really means. It just means we've taken the tier of mobs down to what would normally be found in a raid. And then the second thing we did now is what we're doing internally is, so you're going to see those changing in difficulty on PC test until we put Game Update 32 out. We actually are raising the levels back up right now, because we didn't make that adjustment when we took it down to normal and put it on PC test. We didn't actually take the level back up to where it was initially before we nerfed the level after getting response that it was too difficult and leaving it at the hard mode. I know it's kind of complicated, but does that make sense so far? Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm tracking, yeah.
Okay, good. So what we're doing right now is we're bumping the levels up internally during our playtest to see where it feels good. Right now, we think it's actually too easy during our playthroughs. And then here's the last thing I want to mention, and I really, really think this is like one of the things that's just the most fun about the changes that we're making to Paradox Wave, or I should say specifically to Nexus of Reality. This is less so in Paradox Wave due to the animations and the models and the NPCs, but it's also true of the DLC 9 content. So I personally am very disappointed and frustrated when you go into these raids and you can't use any of the counter mechanics or any of that kind of comboing and block breaking and interrupts and things like that on any of the raid bosses. It just becomes like tree chopping kind of tank and spank, power rotation exercise. And to me, that's disappointing. It's not really where I think our game feels the best or feels like a true action game. So as of DLC 9 and with the other raids in that tier, specifically Nexus of Reality and some of the stuff from Sons of Trigon, you're actually going to be able to counter bosses now. So this all came about during a DLC 9 playtest when Hal Jordan, who was somebody we were fighting in this, actually was counterable, and I was like, this is the most fun I've had in this game in a long time doing a raid. And so we just went back and we actually are opening that up now, at least on that top level, to allow those bosses to be countered. So tanks, melee characters, all of those guys, melee is like the worst thing to get nowadays, right? Everybody plays range because it's like, why do I want to stand in the face of this guy and just eat damage for no reason? I'll just let my tank do that. He's the only guy that's really with a melee weapon. Well, way better to take melee, a mix of melee and range now, because all of those mobs can be lunged, they can be countered, you can get up in their face and block them and put them on their butt because you just, actually interrupted their heavy melee attack, and they get immunity off of you if you give up a counter, so they can counter you now, and the immunity that they get just makes them so they can't be CC'd for that time. So let's say I'm sitting there and I'm in front of Arkillo, and Arkillo, I block. I'm doing my typical Earth tank, I pop a shield up, I hold down my block, and now I'm all of a sudden just sitting there waiting for my little check engine light shield to go away, and I'm popping another shield. Maybe I do an aftershock with to get my shield up, and I'm blocking again. That's just kind of boring. You're just a punching bag. So now if you're doing too much blocking, Arkillo actually does a big interrupt, a block breaker, and bam, I'm on my butt. He's flashing blue now. Nobody can CC him. He can't be countered anymore. He can be damaged still fully. It's not like PvP immunity where there's a damage absorption on you, but he can't be CC'd any longer. So it's really important not to give up the immunity off of him. But that being said, if he tries to do a heavy melee on me when I'm blocking, I knock him down and I've got immunity, so I can go ahead and be free to combo and unleash my attacks because he's not going to be able to CC, interrupt, or cut through my absorption shield at that point. So there's so much more tactics and strategy to the bosses and how they play now. When you're fighting them and using your weapons and your combos matter again in these fights. So that's factoring into the strategy at this point. So I think that we can, because of that, think that leagues like yourselves, which are really running at an elite level of play on the PvE front, and really mastering this content, I think you guys are going to have a blast once you can actually unlock the potential of your weapon combos, specifically the melee combos. Range is awesome because if the bosses start to block your tank in the middle of this attack, all those range plinkers that are out there doing those big charge up or heavy range attacks, boom, they're countering the boss and putting him on his butt, and then you're getting the immunity off in the distance, and some random AE that's coming off underneath you isn't hurting you anymore because you actually got a counter off on the boss. So when we say we made things easier and it's back down to normal level, that needs to be also considered in the context that we gave the bosses more abilities to interrupt the group and take part in the counter mechanics, and you can against them as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, I follow what you're saying, and like you said, it opens up a new layer of play that was missing from raids at the moment, I think.
I remember we
yeah,
tested for it. I mean, back when Origin Crisis was first on PC test, and we were running Nexus, and we were almost expecting there to be these counter mechanics in those fights, and I think we were a little bit surprised that they weren't in them.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and it's always been something that I've, really been I regretted and wished we could have changed. And I think DLC 9 and the tinkering for the difficulty of these raids that were introduced with Origin Crisis and the content that was introduced with Sons of Trigon, really, we just took the opportunity to say, you know what? Let's just make this game, at that top end against those top bosses feel as great and as cool as it does of the players and who's doing what kind of attacks when and why. It's just not all about where you're standing and how much damage that one alpha strike is, or that one attack is coming off the boss. It's just so much more compelling to do that. I mean, I can't tell you. And I think the hesitation initially was that people who were masters at the combo system and the counter mechanics were just going to take advantage of it too much. But quite frankly, it just feels good to take advantage of it. It makes you, makes you feel super powerful when you actually, clobber Kilowog and bust him across the jaw and send him down on his butt because he was trying to do this big, brawling clap range attack on you, and you were just like, oh no, you don't. Lunge, boom, and he gets knocked down, and you're just like, sweet, I got immunity. I'm gonna unload some damage on him without fear of reprisal right now. Okay, my immunity's fading. I need to get my shield back up and get back in position and hope for another counter. It's just so much more fun.
Absolutely agree. And on the same note of Game Update 32, one of the changes introduced was to nature and sorcery. Lots of changes through the skill trees and the powers themselves. Something that hasn't changed is the graphical effects of nature and sorcery. Is that due to time constraints, or are they perceived as good enough at the moment, or is it something in the pipeline once other issues have been fixed, like the PS4?
It's a good question. I appreciate you asking it. I know that there are a lot of people out there that were disappointed that there weren't more graphical changes in the nature and the sorcery revamp. I'm not surprised, but I'm also at the same time a little taken aback because I thought that we've been pretty clear that we were going to start with the powers that were having the most negative impact on performance on the PS3. For that the particles weren't made right, they weren't necessarily reviewed properly, and they were causing performance issues, or specifically when we were using distortion, which we were using a lot, like in mental had all kind of distortion effects, and it just the system couldn't handle it given all the different types of powers and special effects we had and the amount of people and action we had going on in the screen. And so we targeted those first, and we always said we were going to do the ones that were causing the most problems. And if we had to change effects because of performance problems and how they were constructed, we were going to take the opportunity to make some changes to the fidelity of them as well, or the look of them as well, because we were already going to be going in there and making changes. As we got down the list, fewer and fewer changes actually occurred. And of course, some people are actually expecting that now we're going to go through quantum and light and all this other stuff. Well, no, because not necessarily, because those effects were built later, and we had hindsight as there's nothing wrong with quantum. Quantum doesn't need a revamp just because mental got a revamp. It doesn't mean we have to change everything in the game, or that we weren't satisfied with something that we had put out. That being said, I don't want to say we would never change effects with nature or sorcery, but there wasn't anything broken about the effects. Now, people might argue that they don't like the visuals and they don't stack up to powers that we've introduced later, like quantum or celestial, and that may be true, and that's a subjective opinion. I'm not going to say whether or not I agree or disagree, but the most important thing for us was to change the powers, like shape changing yourself on the PS3. It just brings your system to its knees. So that's why we actually changed some things in mental, because people were actually griefing. They were picking a power to use in PvP from the mental that shape changed another player just so they could lag out that other player. You know, those are the kind of things that people were taking advantage of, and it's not their fault necessarily that was happening, but they knew it was happening, and so they would actually, you know, take advantage of it. It became game breaking. So we have to fix that kind of stuff, and there just aren't that many instances of that in the powers as you go on later. It's true with shape changing and form changing in nature. It will lag you out on the PS3, but at least it's just happening to you. You're not necessarily doing it to another player. And when you are doing it to another player, we've done everything we can to address that. So I don't know what to say. I mean, I feel sorry for the fact that people were expecting more. But, you know, like you said, as far as resources and time goes, there's just only so many resources and so much time. And while people might say or claim that, oh, I'm totally willing to wait for a DLC for you to change nature, for you to change sorcery, yeah, that might be true if you're a nature or a sorcery guy, but it's not true if you're a quantum guy, or it's not true if you're a fire guy. You want the next DLC. So there's just, you know, we have to try and deliver on our promises of the cadence at which we're supposed to put out this content. And our DLCs require a lot of effects work. You know, when we put out a Legends character, it gets a lot of unique effects. When we put out a new superpower, it gets a lot of unique effects. Even just the content that gets put in the game has a lot of effects work that goes into it. So if there wasn't something broken with it, if there wasn't something that absolutely had to change, which would then give us the excuse to go in and change other things about it, it wasn't going to get changed. Because you know, we're not redoing these things just to redo them. We're redoing these things because they needed to be fixed. So I don't know what more to say about it than that, other than I'm not going to say no, we won't change things in the future if we have the bandwidth to do so. But right now, it's certainly not on our radar, given all the other things that we have to do and all the other things that people want us to fix or add or address in the game.
It's fair enough though, because I agree with what you say, that the people were asking for cosmetic revamps to nature and sorcery. It's not as important as bringing new content to the community. I don't see it that way. I think people would appreciate more newer content.
Yeah, and I feel for the people that are playing nature and sorcery and feeling like they've been, you know, overlooked, but I don't know how to put it anyway. It wasn't personal. It's not because we don't care about the nature and sorcery players in the game. It's just, you know, there were problems with those other effects, with those other powers in the effects with them. There were literal game affecting problems with them. Not, hey, I don't like the look of this circle of power. You know, that's a different kind of change. And while I would love to fix all those issues or address all those comments for people, there just simply aren't enough hours in the day for our developers to do all that stuff and still maintain our commitments, which we already struggle with, as you know. You know, people are sometimes doing the math and saying only 3 DLCs this year. Yep, sorry about that. We wanted to get DLC 9 War of the Light Part 1 out sooner, but that's not how it unfolded. We had other commitments we were asked to do, and, you know, other fires erupted that were unexpected to us that we had to address immediately, and sometimes those trying to fight those fires caused other fires. You know, it's just this like chain reaction of stuff that can happen. You know, this is game development, and we're making entertainment here, and when you're doing that, you're trying to innovate within the systems that you have, and you're adding new tech when you can to accomplish that, and those additions and those changes can sometimes affect the game in ways you don't expect. So you're constantly chasing those things down while trying to move forward, and sometimes you just don't have time to look back all the time. So
cool. The next one was the Armories. You guys did a fantastic live stream, very detailed. It's a fantastic system. It's way more detailed than I thought it would be. Is there any kind of time scale in place now for these to come out? I think people are quite desperate for them.
I am.
Yeah, me
2014.
too. Yes, that is. It's going to be.
But that's a whole year.
I know. No, it's gonna be it's gonna be game update 33 or sooner, so January.
Yeah, we wanna make sure we go out right with these and we actually get this right. I'm so excited for the system. It's actually something that came up during initial development when we were sitting down and doing the design for the game in general. There's a piece of concept art that we had done almost 7 years ago that showed, these armory-like objects where, initially it was actually based on your roles. So we had all powers had all roles at one point. That was on the table. There could be a fire, healer, troller, tank, or DPS. And so we had this concept of your base and your lair where you would see these kind of tubes that each had different kinds of role armor that were themed after your guy. And there was one for your weapon over here. And, obviously that concept got way out of scope and a lot of things changed in terms of how we were going to do powers and what it meant to be a fire guy versus a nature guy or whatever. And but it got revived. We got a lot of requests to get specs in there and saving specs. So I think we could have done something where it was like an interface only kind of feature. Where it's like, I saved my spec, here it is, bloop, and it's just sort of not actually doesn't have a presence in the game world. But I kept thinking that was just like falling way short of what the fantasy of that would be, and what something like that would be like in a superhero game like this. And you think about Batman and that vault that he walks into, and he's got his Arctic gear and his undersea gear and his space gear, and you're just like, and it all looks like Batman outfits, and you're like, that's what we need these specs to be, these spec saving things. So dug back to that creative idea of these armories. Originally they were called suit tubes, which is a kind of a lame name, so we went with something cooler. And so we put these armories in the game, and we've just been working on them for a long time. And as you saw in the live stream, the way they work, they actually save your look and your style, your configuration, the tints of your colors, your skill point specifications, your power point distribution, loadouts for both of your roles that are on your bar, and the gear that you have on. And it displays it in your base, and you can see it right there, and you'll be able to place them wherever you want. They can all be next to each other or spread out, doesn't really matter. And I think it's going to make people feel like their lair is really truly becoming like the Batcave, and that's the intention of that base system and the armories in general. So I can't wait. And I'm kind of a nerd too. When I go into Ace Chemicals, I always want to put on like a hazmat outfit because I feel like it's cooler to go in there with like a hazmat kind of outfit on, which is why my Spytle character on PC looks the way he does. I went in there and I was like, ooh, I'm going to go do this Ace Chemical run. And I put together this outfit, and then I didn't want to change it again because it was such a pain in the ass. So I was like, I really want a system that will allow me to, kind of just change my outfit for the occasion, even if I'm wearing the same gear. I just wanted to change my look.
I think that's the most exciting aspect for me as well. I'd like a list of a whole row of these costume tubes with different costumes throughout my gaming career in DCUO. I can just walk along, and anybody going into my base can see what I used to wear, what I wear now, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. And I think the system has a lot to offer for expandability down the road, too. Right now, it's just a single effect and a single animation when you do the change. But, initially our intent was you're going to be able to customize your special effect and your animation. And you can do the transformation how you wanted to. So, it's the difference between, Shazam doing his thing and sort of the lightning bolt coming down and bam, he changes, versus maybe somebody who's an ice guy and wants to like encase themselves with a block of ice and burst out of it. These are the kind of things that I think the system has potential for down the road. And had we just done something that was like in the interface and down and dirty, let you save this stuff, we were missing all those opportunities to allow players to differentiate themselves and become even more unique in DC Universe Online by using the system the way we've designed it. So I think it's going to be worth the wait, is I guess what I'm trying to say with all that.
Yeah, I think this is the coolest thing we've ever added. Like, hands down, the coolest thing I've ever seen us add to the game since I've been here. So I am super excited.
Yeah, I'd agree. Both functionally and aesthetically, it's the most impressive aspect, I think.
So
Cool,
there's no plans
thank
to
you.
add a telephone box into the game that you can go into and spin around and get changed.
No, this is more of the metaphorical phone booth transformation, not the literal. Yeah, it's funny. A long time ago, we did a prototype that was internal only. I always had this kind of interest in adding a secret ID system, and we had done a prototype about what that would be like. Running around the city as a plainclothes guy. It's really interesting when you actually get rid of the movement mode powers in our game. These cities are huge. Like you really take it for granted when you're going supersonic down through Metropolis, like that it's how big it is. You take it for granted. And when we were actually running around in plain clothes and interacting with the content in different ways and getting your Jimmy Olsen on and taking pictures of stuff, like that was happening on the street. And then it would you'd get some to some point in the mission, and it was like, quick, go find a phone booth. And we had put all these phone booths out there, and you'd walk over to the phone booth and interact with it, and you'd turn back into yourself, and then you could go do a different part of the mission. But that sort of, it never really got any traction or really found a sort of place in the game as compared to the other things that we had to develop. It's tricky, a lot of people ask for different things, like, it's not like we haven't thought of the secret ID system. People will post like, why haven't they done this? And the real reason is to give you a little insight into how developers think about these things and make these decisions. Every time we add something like that to the game, we have to have a progression path for it. There has to be a reason to do it. And then you have to now, once you add it in, not only are you supporting the PvE progression path for each of the roles, the PvP progression path for Legends and for arenas, and you've got the DLC content coming out. There are all these things you start adding. The vault, even, it's geez, what was the last time we updated stuff in the vault? Even the lockboxes, we added these lockboxes. We're supposed to be supporting those too with rewards. So every time you add a new system like that, you have to support it long term. And we have a lot of stacks that we have to keep adding to the top of already. So those kind of things they're really great to think about and dream about, but there just isn't an endless amount of resource to support all that kind of stuff. And you really do have to make it compelling and have a proper place in the game in order to put it in. But anyway, little behind the curtain comment based on your phone booth comment there. I know I'm going to hear about this.
And then moving on to something else you guys brought up was the feat unlocking for alts through marketplace purchases. Any progression on that?
Yeah, we're making progress. One of the reasons that Armories is taking so long, or has taken so long, it's not just the engineering that went into that. One of the reasons that feat unlocks are taking a while, and sometimes why systems in general can take a while, is UI. Our old UI was really, really hard to develop with. In fact, one of the reasons we were changing the UI over to begin with is because every time we needed a system that required UI, it was like rebuilding the UI all over again. It wasn't a very plug-and-play modular kind of architecture. Everything was a snowflake. Nothing was harnessing or utilizing systems from other screens. And you can kind of tell that based on the ridiculous amount of redundancies and differences there are in user interfaces, and why some screens work smoothly when selecting things and other screens don't. Those things are each individual little snowflakes, and it was really frustrating. And so the UI team was directed, when we knew we were doing PS4, to overhaul the UI for the PS4 launch, and that we would be able to make all of these new systems in the new UI. Well, the new UI just did not come along as quickly as we wanted it to, and we weren't able to get enough usability testing on the changes in the designs that were being made by the UI team, that we didn't feel comfortable going out with it, and we had to shelve it. And so all of this work was being deferred to be done in the new UI, and then we pulled the plug on the new UI until it was ready. And so now okay, well, what do we do? Well, now we have to do the work in the old UI and then redo it in the new UI when that comes online. And of course, that's double the work and takes a lot of time to do that. So that the main reason that these things are taking as long as they are is simply because we need to have the UI support, and that team has been just absolutely in a vice trying with the deadlines and the obligations that they're being asked to do, for not only new development of new features, but development of the new UI and things that are getting added and done and requested on the marketplace. There's just a lot on their plate, and they're working as hard and as fast as they can to get this done. But now we're having them actually do things that we know they're going to have to do over, because it's just like, well, we can't keep waiting on this any longer. So as soon as we can get the actual UI done for the feat unlocks, we will get those out to you. But right now we're still trying to finish up Armories and the generator components to go with the Armories and whatnot. So that's where we are on that. I'm looking forward to them, the feat unlocks, because I know that people would be playing a lot more alts if they didn't have to go and smash 1,000 barrels over and over again on each of these characters. Who wants to do that a million times? I think they get the concept of barrel smashing after they get that feat the first time.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have your plates full. I mean, as a player, I've never touched kind of game development or anything. You don't really understand the level of work and how much work is required to go into these things.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that's why when people use the term lazy for us, it just sends me through the roof, because if there's one thing I can assure you and the people listening to this right now is that our team is not lazy. In fact, they work tremendous amounts of hours and really are under a lot of pressure to make sure that the product is satisfying the customer's needs and that people are having fun, and that we are also able to keep our business going as well, and expand the game into areas that allow us to continue to grow it and support it from a financial and development standpoint. A lot of that comes down to commerce, and a lot of the commerce comes down to UI, and those guys have a lot on their plate. That makes sense.
I mean, how is it to field like negative comments and feedback from the community when, of course, they're not aware of what goes on behind the scenes? Does that ever really get you down, or is it something that you can brush off and just carry on with?
That's a great question. I think I'll answer it briefly and then let Mepps chime in on that, because that's really his wheelhouse. But I mean, he sees that the turmoil and angst that I go through when those comments come in, and I don't do him any favors, and probably myself, when I let them really get under my skin. But it's hard. We're all very emotionally attached to this game, and random comments made about percentages of increases in activity or revenue and all this kind of stuff, they don't mean anything if you don't understand the original number the percentage is based off of. So it's all great to say 700% increase in that, but what does that really mean? If you don't know what the source number was. So a lot of people feel like, oh, we're a DC title and we must be just taking money baths all the time. We're not. We're a free-to-play game. It's only focused on the negative and not the positive. It can really be demoralizing. And QQ, I'm crying, whatever. It's some people feel it's part of the job, and it is part of the job. But when it goes too far, it can really get you down. And Mepps has seen it on my face, and I sometimes have to walk over and apologize and let him know for I think I stirred up a can of worms for you and started a fire you need to put out. But I'll let him speak to that.
Well,
the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, it comes with the territory, right? We all know that, but at the end of the day, even though you should shrug off things or respond, in a certain way to comments that are made, it at the end of the day, it does affect you. Most days, there are a lot more positive comments or positive things going on than negative comments, especially in kind. Most of the comments we deal with are at least constructive, right? They're communicating something, and that's what we live for. I mean, that's what I live for, I guess. I'm not sitting over there creating the game. You know, I thrive on the discussion on what do you want to see next, so that we can make the game better or explain something. So I love to see that, you know, and that can be negative, right? And that's great. The problem are the insults and the kind of baseless accusations when people are passionate and upset about something. But at the end of the day, it's also just, you know, people are passionate and upset about something because they're passionate about it, and that's a good thing. And that's how you try to frame it and go on. And it just, as angry as you get at someone for saying something to you, almost every time when you approach them in a, you know, professional manner and address what is actually bothering them and not respond to whatever awful insult they just said to you, you know, they turn around and they are thankful, like, you know, minute to minute, completely different animals sometimes. So yeah, it's tough. Being on the internet is tough. Being on the internet doing games is tough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
it must be really difficult not to say something that you shouldn't say sometimes.
Well, a lot of times we end up saying it to each other. You know, like walk by and here's what so and so said and here's what I'd say back, and then, you know, you get it out of your system, you move on.
That's good.
Okay, well, if it's okay with the gentleman, I'd like to talk about DLC 9, War of the Light Part 1. We've already covered that the new power set will be Rage, Red Lantern kind of based. What about the storyline? You able to give us any insights into that?
Yeah, basically what's happened is we took Metropolis and we use this technology, we call it head map technology, and it's basically what allows us to do our seasonal events and kind of turn them on and off and, you know, put wreaths and garlands around Gotham City and Metropolis and whatnot and have that content appear. We use that to actually take Metropolis and do a new version of it. So all the old content, mind you, not the geo changes, like were you able to go over, you know, to Little Bohemia, the boardwalk would still be trashed. Or for example, the crash site that's, you know, in Centennial Park is still there. However, none of the content that's associated with that stuff is actually still around. Everything is themed after the War of the Light trilogy. And so what we've done is we've taken a part of the city, and there is a map border that doesn't let you get to the rest of the city, and we will be doing part 1 will take place and start out in one part of the city, and part 2 will actually move that border further in until part 3, where we're actually exploring a whole bunch of the city, if not the whole thing. I can't confirm that it'll be the whole thing. That's really going to be up to the design team when they get in there and start making it. But the city will grow. Now, what does the city look like right now? Well, the end of Fight for the Light, we had the Red Lantern show up. There was some experiment going on with Star Labs. Brainiac actually had some involvement in the failing of the rings and an effect on the emotional spectrum. He was trying to digitize it. So really this kind of picks up from there. And what happens is in the streets of Metropolis, you ever seen the movie The Mist?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Okay, so all of a sudden,
No.
I know you haven't. It wouldn't be a show with you and me if you didn't get a movie reference I made. So I'm glad we can check that off the list. So what happens is all of a sudden these prismatic mists have appeared in Metropolis. There's an emerald one, a topaz one, an azure one, they're an amber one. They're all different kinds of mists, just these clouds of it flowing through the city. And they're sparkling with energy. And the citizens and the NPCs, the various like Star Lab scientists that are out there trying to study it, they're all getting affected by the mist in different ways. The crimson mist is making people go enraged and crazy. The emerald mist is giving them great determination. So you can kind of follow here. It's having some kind of effect. There's some kind of connection to the emotional spectrum. And all of the cores are trying to figure out what is going on. So all of a sudden you look up in the sky and you're going to see Mogo hanging up there. Mogo literally has moved to Earth, and he is in orbit around Earth. And opposite him in the sky over Metropolis is Ranks, the sentient city of the Sinestro Corps. In between them, you can see blue, red, yellow, and green lights, as if the lanterns are having this major battle up in the stars above you. It kind of looks like, when the Emperor is trying to convert Luke, and they're watching the Rebel and Imperial fleet fight out there, and you can see the little bursts of explosions as the TIE fighters and the X-Wings are getting blown up. It kind of looks like that, only with Mogo and Ranks and various, dots of colored light in the sky. We changed the skybox, so the time of day is like just about sunset, where you can start seeing stars happen on one part of the sky, and a really brilliant kind of sunset, like dusky kind of effect on the other side. So we've completely changed the city. You can see these mists everywhere. Mogo Ranks up in the sky above you. The War of the Light is spilling out onto the streets. We're introducing the Blue Lantern Corps. So Saint Walker and Brother Worth are showing up for the first time in the game. So now we have these 4 corps: Sinestro Corps, Green Lantern Corps, Red Lanterns, and Blue Lanterns are all mixing it up in the streets of Metropolis with these mists. And it basically starts out, I don't want to say too much because I want people to be able to explore it, but you're going to be able to go in the operations. There's 2 4-man operations and an 8-man operation for heroes and villains. And they'll be doing to the emotional spectrum, and then there's tactical strikes that are going on to try and take out the enemy. So players will be doing operations not only in the streets of Metropolis, but they'll be going up inside of Mogo, and they'll be going inside of Ranks, and they'll be meeting new NPCs that we have in there. For instance, Cyborg Superman is there on the Sinestro Corps, and he'll be working with Sinestro and Arquillo and the other Amansur and the other existing Sinestro Corps agents that are in the game. You're going to see Saint Walker and Brother Worth working with the Green Lanterns. Guy Gardner. We've added Arisa as a new character that's making an appearance. She's probably not a super well-known Green Lantern to the average player, but maybe to the DC Comics fans, they know exactly who she is. So we have in Kilowog, Kyle Rayner making an appearance. Now these mists, as you're going through and doing all this content. Oh, by the way, you got it. Mogo, the center, the core of Mogo, the command center, is so badass. His power ring is in there, and it's on this giant stone column. You see this huge. You see Mogo's power ring wrapped around it while he's having conversations with Hal, and they're talking about the mists and what's going on with the various cores. This is so freaking cool. It's amazing. And you're hanging out, you're watching everything going on around you in the command center. You're seeing Green Lanterns and Blue Lanterns teleporting up to Mogo with these mist containers that they're taking from the Star Labs guys that are collecting them down on the planet, and they're analyzing them. You see Kilowog rallying the troops, trying to get them ready for battle. Kyle Rayner's up there. And then you can go up and talk to Brother Worth and Saint Walker, and they give you a little insight about what's going on. It's super, super cool. I just love it. I love that area. And then anyway, as you're going and doing this content, all of a sudden you realize the mist is affecting the NPCs that are in the city, but it's also affecting some of the iconics. So once in a while, Mogo, if he senses one of his lanterns are in trouble, he might actually infuse one of the iconics that isn't a Green Lantern with this mist, and it sort of takes them over, and they become an agent of will or an agent of fear, right? They go to the aid of this character. So you're going to see characters like Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, actually taken over and put into Green Lantern form. You're going to see Blue Lantern Flash in the game. Stuff like that. We're really paying off on kind of drafting all these iconics into the mix in our own way, different from how they did it in the story or in the comic books, but still paying off on that moment of seeing Blue Lantern Flash. You get to see him, but how he becomes Blue Lantern Flash and why is very, very different in our storyline, but it still pays off on that fanboy moment that you really want to see. It's awesome. I've fought Yellow Mist infused Scarecrow and Parasite. Gorilla Grodd gets taken over by the Red Mist, along with Bruno Mannheim. Bruno Mannheim's one of my favorites. We actually, took him and we're like, hey, Deathstroke gets infused by the Yellow Mist as well. So there's like a Sinestro Core version of Deathstroke going on. So we're doing some of the classic ones that I think people will recognize from the comic books, and we're even putting in our own twists and new ones in there as well. So the whole first part is really trying to figure out what these mists are and what's going on with the various cores and the emotional spectrum and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be pretty epic and fun.
To go maybe a little bit away from this particular DLC, but there was a couple of DLCs in a row where we didn't get much new in terms of design, and that seems to have turned around and kicked up a notch. I mean, there was Origin Crisis, obviously we had, that was the start of the operations with Metropolis and Gotham, and daytime Gotham for the villains was just such an interesting piece, and Sons of Trigon as well, and this just sounds like the same. You're really kicking it up a notch in terms of the design.
Yeah, we're trying to, with MMOs, as the game gets older and older, you try and get better and better at what you're doing, because your team size never increases from launch, right? Your team size is always sort of shrinking as the game goes on, and so you have to start getting really clever with how you're gonna put these DLCs together. And we've been spending a lot of time on tools and making sure that we have the efficiency that we need to in order to produce the content at the level of expectations that the players have based on a team size that was much larger when we launched. And the other thing too, the reason we went to the trilogy format is so that the artists can leverage the work that they're doing. Typically before, our kind of DLCs were a little bit more one-offy. They didn't really take advantage or say, hey, we're going to use these assets over a significant period of time. No, it's just sort of one DLC, one and done, move on, right? And so that just wasn't sustainable necessarily. And also, because of the short turnaround time that we have on the DLCs, usually MMOs will put something out every year and a half. They'll do some big expansion. Well, that gives them a lot of opportunity to actually, leverage the art team to create a lot of content on a fewer amount of themes. It still feels like a lot, and it all feels new, but it was really, there was a lot of clever reuse there, and a lot of reapplication of how you put the Legos together. You can have the same amount of pieces and you put them together in different forums and get a lot more shapes out of it, so to speak. And so by going to the trilogy format, what it's allowing us to do is plan way ahead. We know we're going to be using this new Metropolis as a stage for 2 more DLCs beyond War of the Light Part 1. We'll use it for Part 2 and Part 3. We know we're going to continue to use Mogo and Ranks and even expand those interiors and with new locations in Mogo and Ranks. And then we can add something else, right? Like in Part 2, you might see other locations, a few other locations from the GL lore. So when we move into Amazon Fury, you can imagine the same thing happen there. We're going to be using, which is going to be a 3-parter as well, and it's going to use a new version of Gotham City. It's going to have new locations on Themyscira, and then from there, we'll be able to use the Amazon and the Greek myth assets, the mythological creatures and things like that, and expand out through the DLCs and really leverage what we've done. I think players will really start to appreciate the type of storytelling, the content creation, and the asset generation that we're able to do on these to bring them these awesome deals, these awesome bits of the trilogies as we go forward. And by the time we're done, I think that you'll get something much more meatier than you would have had, say, for, I don't know, like Lightning Strikes, right? But that's a weird one, because that actually had tie into Battle for Earth and Origin Crisis with the timey-wimey time travel kind of stuff. But Sons of Trigon's a good example, though. That definitely followed up on a storyline that was there at launch with the launch content, but it sort of is its own little one-off DLC. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, you can't do much more with, Hell Gotham, the Gotham Wastelands than what we have right there. We pretty much tied a bow time. So I'm really excited about them.
You mentioned there Amazon Fury. Is that going to be the title for the Amazon DLCs?
It's the working title right now.
Working
TBD.
title.
You know, we have to run all that through legal and marketing and DC themselves, and they'll tell us what it can and can't be called in the end. I think for now they like that title, so that's what I've been referring to it as, and what I announced it as at SOE Live this last year. Just like Halls of Power and that trilogy that's going to be dealing with the new gods. People like that title. We got a kind of soft okay from marketing and DC, but who knows, when the lawyers get involved, they may change their mind and want to make us change a word here and there. I have no idea. We'll see. That's above my pay grade.
Looking ahead, are they still planned as 10 and 11 respectively? So we have Amazons and then Halls of Power.
That's the plan right now, but we will see. And again, the reason that Halls of Power was pushed, that DLC was scheduled to be out quite some time ago, but again, this comes down to UI. Revamping the league management system and adding the league hall system to the base feature is just going to take some time, and we had planned on doing it in the new UI, but that's not quite ready yet. So we have to make a call on if we're going to do the work twice or if we're going to wait for the new UI to come on. So again, it's just a logistics question, not that we're ignoring the DLC that we've wanted to do for a while.
Can I just ask a quick question about how it works with DCUO, with examples of storylines and characters that you can use? Is that something that you choose amongst yourselves? Can I use this character or storyline from the comics, and then you go to DC and ask them if you can use those, or do they come to you and give you a strict storyline to follow on a long-term basis?
That's up to us, but they get final approval, and so we're pretty much in charge of the creative and what we want to try and do. And they're just terrific partners. They really work with us because they understand that we're not a single-player game trying to tell a contained narrative. We have hundreds and thousands of players that are interacting with each other in the game and the characters, and we have to structure our content and represent these characters in a certain way. I think we just lost Mepps there.
Yep.
So we definitely come up with the concepts, but they do get final approval. If they don't like something or think we're not representing the brand or the character, or they have an issue of how we're using the character, or maybe they know something that's coming up in the comics that they feel that's too close to or going to be stepping on, then they tell us to change it. Or if they have something that they're going to be doing in the comics that they would like us to feature so that we can kind of get it some more visibility, then we do try and accommodate that as well. So it's a two-way street, but really the kind of the storytelling and the creative does come from us inside the building.
I seem to recall, and I can't remember where this was from, but I seem to recall you mentioning that they approached you about including Barry Allen as the Flash.
Yeah, we actually had, at the time, Barry Allen was dead still, and we actually had the outfit designed for Wally West, and that's why our Kid Flash was Bart Allen in the that Impulse version. And so when Jeff Johns decided he was going to resurrect Barry, they asked us to change from Wally West to Barry, and basically the timing of that didn't allow us the opportunity to change the Kid Flash model that we had. So Wally got kind of cut right out of there. It wasn't intentional. It just sort of happened based on logistics and a request from our licensor to focus on Barry instead of Wally. Boy, do Wally West fans take offense to that, but really, no disrespect. We didn't mean anything by it.
I can imagine. Wally West was one of my favourite Flash, really, over Barry Allen.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sorry. Now we're in a weird spot, where it's how do you get him in here when you've sort of skipped over him? I'm not sure how to resolve that necessarily.
Well, I think DC's having that issue in the New 52 as well.
Are they? Possibly.
So, do you deal with any of the comic book writers themselves as well? Like you mentioned, Jeff Johns. Do you ever get to meet him and talk about things?
Oh yeah, prior to launch, Jeff was someone I saw a lot at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. We had several offsites with a lot of different writers, Grant Morrison and Brian Azzarello and many more. They were all sort of part of these initial talks about this. But in the end, it just became too complicated to try and get them involved. And the storytelling, even Paul Levitz was there, quite frankly, for a few of them. But the storytelling that we could do was very different from the storytelling they were used to, and how we were going to use the characters and incorporate the players. And it all became very complicated, and I don't think those guys necessarily had time to do it. We don't tell stories that were directly from the books. There's a reason for that. They would need to compensate and get the creators of the original stories involved, and there's like all kinds of credit issues and things like that go on that we just really don't do in our game. We don't come up and you're starting this episode and all of a sudden credits are flying up about who wrote it and or what story it was based on and things like that. It just kind of breaks immersion to you. So we really focused on trying to do homages to the characters and the stories that we saw. Hence the War of the Light is definitely inspired by all the work that Jeff Johns did with the Sinestro Corps War and the Brightest Day, all that kind of, Blackest Night kind of lead up and all that kind of stuff. So we shall see where that one goes. I don't want to say too much. But no, we don't have any involvement with them right now. We don't. Marv Wolfman also was involved. So, really what happened was I came up with this story concept for the overall game. I knew I wanted to incorporate the players in a huge way. I needed to make them not feel like, who is that? So it's okay for you from your perspective, if you actually are walking up to Batman and talking to Batman, you feel like you belong. Right? Because you've created your character and you're like, yeah, I'm part of the DC universe right now.
Yeah.
But the other dude looking at you has no idea who you are or what you're doing there and wonders what you're doing in his DC universe. Why is he talking to Batman? I have no idea who that is. So it was really important to us to make sure that you had a place. So I knew that I wanted to have this version of Lex Luthor comes back from the future and releases all of these superpowers into the general populace to tip the balance of some tragic event that happened in the future. And Jim Lee and I were working on that very closely together. And we just couldn't agree on anything or settle anything. And we kept all the writers and we weren't getting any traction. So finally I called up Jim and I sent him an email, I don't remember what. And I was like, can we just get Jeff Johns involved? I was really into Jeff's writing at that point. I was like, can we just get Jeff to come in here and sort this all out? And so Jim made a phone call and he used his amazing political muscles and got that to happen. And then so Jeff took the outline that we had and he transformed it into, nudged it around and put it into a story that you saw at launch, in terms of like what the events were specifically, and what was happening and why. And then once he did that, he wanted to make sure that he had a writer in place that he was comfortable with to translate that story into all the episodic stuff that you saw in the game. And so we tapped Marv Wolfman to come be that person. And so Marv worked with me and Dana Curtin, who was our editorial designer on the
Mepps joining us again.
And oh yeah, I see. Welcome back, Mepps. Welcome back.
Hey, sorry about that.
So he came to Austin a bunch and worked with us for a long time in all the various storylines you're seeing, the Trigon stuff, the Black Adam Faust storyline. All those storylines were done with myself, Marv, and Dana at a high level. And then the designers took those and actually fleshed them out into the actual content episodes. And of course, there was a lot of, where it began with just me and Jim, through bringing Jeff in, through having that passed on to Marv, through that getting down to the team. Obviously, there's a lot of change and evolution that happened. So everybody contributed across the board to that. But once that moment, all that was over and we launched, it's all been internal at that point. We work with our partners over at WBIE. There are several producers over there who actually work with us in terms of approving what we want to do. Hey, we have an idea for a DLC. Can we do this? And they say, yes, that's cool. Or yeah, that's cool, but what about changing this, or could you add all those stories?
Wow. It just sounds like
See,
a creative
I
nightmare.
told you I could talk.
Just to have all those people in the room at the time collaborating on one storyline must be amazing.
It was really amazing to meet them all and see them all. But when you get that many creative people in the room, you don't make a lot of traction really quickly. You know, when you narrow it down to a smaller group, that's when you start actually making more progress and zeroing in on a particular idea, because everybody has their own stuff. You know, I mean, Grant Morrison's style of storytelling and the stories he likes to tell is widely different from you know, Greg Rucka. You know, it's just completely different.
Plus, creative people are just difficult to deal with, you know.
Hey.
Is Grant Morrison going to be influencing the Halls of Power DLCs at all?
Well, I mean, all of these guys are influencing it in some way, and the fact that they've created the source material that we're drawing from. So, I mean, I would respectfully say yes, but I would no, not directly. We won't be calling Grant or working with him directly on it.
Although if he calls us, you know.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to take Grant's call. If I have a little trouble once in a while with the accent, but most of the time I can deal with it.
Yeah, we have a little trouble with Tess's accent sometimes. She's from around the same area, Scotland, somewhere in Scotland.
I'm not the worst one we've got.
Jeff Johns seems to be DC's go-to guy at the moment for reinvigorating characters, like he's done with Green Lantern and Aquaman. He's done really well on the new 52 Aquaman, and there's been rumblings of an Aquaman movie coming up in the near future. How do you feel about something like that? We know you particularly like Aquaman.
Well, I actually voice him in the game. I'm not sure if you knew that or not. But so I have to say, I'm wondering why they haven't called, if that's true.
Yeah, I was wondering if you was going to actually be auditioning for a part in the movie when it comes up.
Yeah, I think my Atlantean hunk days are well behind me, if they were actually ever here. So, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe if they had some kind of scale mail Spanx, I could work it out. You know, some kind of Atlantean girdle. But I do enjoy doing the character. You know, it's funny. I kind of modeled the voice after I was watching The Tudors at the time with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, and I just really liked the way he did his inflections, and so I tried to bring a bit of that to, you know, Arthur's character or Orin's character, and get that kind of, you know, regal tone and inflection that he had that I really enjoyed listening to when I was watching that show. I don't know if it was 100% entirely appropriate for the character, so I kind of wince once in a while when I hear myself doing it, but it is what it is at this point.
Immortalized now, though.
Yeah, exactly. The one I enjoy doing the most is Tio Maro. I just love doing him. He's just so much fun. They need to make a movie about him.
Did you do much voice acting before you were on DCUO?
Yeah, I've actually done voices for almost every video game that I've made. I did an X-Men game prior to coming here and doing DCUO, and I did voices in that. I was actually the voice of the Sentinels in that game, and that was a lot of fun. I've done some stuff in the Star Wars Battlefront game I did. I got to be one of the NPC voices that you hear. All my Activision days when I first started in video games, I was actually voice directing all the actors on my first project I ever did as a designer. It was a very different time in game development back then, of course. When I was working for Activision and first started, I did this game called Battlezone, and I did all the voice direction and even played some voices in it. And that's sort of where it started. I actually went to college for acting. I have a BFA in acting. And, at the time when I graduated, I'm really tall, 6'8". I was thin as a rail and not very, gregarious or charismatic when it came to like the schmoozing part of trying to be an actor. I certainly didn't have a famous relative that was going to get me in the nepotism route. So I kind of reinvented myself and figured what I wanted to do with my life and went and got into video games. And ironically enough, that actually led to me doing some performing in the video games that I've been in. So I was able to follow a dream of mine and make these games and really be a nerd for a living and still scratch that acting bug that I've always had, growing up. So.
What about you, Mepps? Are you planning on doing any voiceovers for characters in upcoming DLCs or anything like that?
No.
He and I are apparently polar opposites when it comes to answers. I go on for 20 minutes. He just goes one syllable.
Would you like to do voices?
Yeah, come on, Mepps. Who would you want to be if I cast you as somebody in the game?
I mean, when we put bat maps in the game, I'd like to do that. That'd be great.
No,
that'd be cool.
No made-up characters. Come on. Oh, you know what? What if we did Batmite? Would you do Batmite? You don't know who Batmite is, do you?
I don't know who Batmite is.
Oh dear.
Batmite is a fifth-dimensional being like Spytle, but he's like a Batman fan.
Nah, I don't think that doesn't sound very cool. No. I
He's
decline.
He's how I picture Batmepps.
Oh,
What
no.
a prima donna. He's so picky. As you know, that role is beneath me.
I have absolutely no aspirations, and I never even thought about it. I'll have to think about it for a bit.
We've put it on the
you might
table
want to
now.
quantify that. You might want to quantify that. Are you saying you have no aspirations, or you have no aspirations to be a voice actor?
To be a voice actor is what I meant.
Okay, good. I hope you have some aspirations, my son, because we will need to talk if you don't.
We've got to get you in the game somehow now, Mepps. Now that you've said no, you have to do it.
Aren't there like unions and stuff? Isn't this actually more complicated?
Yeah, it actually is. So this is a union project, so we have to have union actors in it, and that is just the sort of result of having Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy and all those union guys who are the big stars of the DC animated series and things like that be a part of this. We needed to be a union project. And Mepps is not union. It's like this catch-22. It's like you can't do union jobs if you're not in the union, but you can't get in the union unless you do a union job. That's a mind blower.
Yeah, I'm just stuck. Apparently that's going to have to be tabled for now. That's too bad.
Oh, you sound so broken up.
Well, where are we at on questions? You guys have some more you want to fire at us?
I've got a couple of small ones.
Okay.
There's a couple that are all very similarly themed. Things that are missing from the game or have been in the game before that we're not quite sure where they went or why. The first one to discuss is the Gunslinger coat, which used to be part of the PvP vendor that was part of the Diamond Heist or the Ring War, and that's gone now. And a lot of people are missing it.
I got no idea. I have no idea if it's gone, where it went, or what. I honestly don't. I apologize. I wish I could answer that for you right now, but I might not know these minor details that could, like, where did those shoes go that used to. I'm probably not going to have those answers.
You might
right
have a
now.
better idea about the next two. The next one, it's something that we've all been looking for in the game and hasn't showed up yet. The pool table for our bases.
We have now. What makes you think there is a pool table?
We've seen it. I'm fairly sure. Everybody says
in the safe house or in my base.
In your base.
Okay, there. Now, so when on my character, my GM character, Spytle, okay, who didn't always used to be a GM character, by the way. I did level him at one point organically, but then I just went, oh well, everybody knows who I am now. I'm just going to make this my GM character. I granted myself, when we made the base system initially, we took a whole mess of props and we stripped them out of the content that we had just to see what we had available in the game already. So there were a lot of things that were already pre-set up that were not yet released, and we were planning on having a backlog to release those things over time. Because were we to release everything all at once, then we would be in a position where we were like, oh no, we now have to make all new stuff. And as you guys know, we've talked about resources and time and all that kind of things. That would probably break the team at some point. So we've kept some things in our pocket and we released them over time. Now I gave myself and granted myself every single one of those items on my character to be testing the base system. So that's why I had the mammoth before anybody else actually had the mammoth or the saber-tooth and all that kind of stuff. None of that stuff was released yet. So you might see some things in my base, and I've said this before when I've done walkthroughs, that aren't yet released. But I will put the pool table on the top of the list for you with our systems designer who actually starts adding that stuff into the game as we add new DLCs and rewards for various seasonals and updates and stuff like that. I will mention the pool table.
Yeah, because I think we've always assumed that we'd be getting one eventually because we've had the pool cue.
You will. It exists. Oh, did we put the pool cue rack in the game and not the pool table?
Yeah.
That is so us.
That was the very first thing that was out, and there was loads of them dropping, so everybody assumed that the pool table was a really rare drop.
Yeah,
and
no.
People...
See, this is the interesting thing where people think there's some grand conspiracy or something, like we didn't put that in there on purpose or whatever. It's just an oversight, and we probably just goofed on it. So I'll make mention of the pool table and the fact that we already have the pool cue rack in there, and I'm sure that'll make it into a batch soon.
The last one is definitely not in the game yet, but a lot of people have been clamoring for it. When are we going to see a unicorn trinket?
No comment. No comment.
Oh man. All right. No comment right now.
Although I'm pretty sure me
really
cutting you off
answer.
is worse than me just letting you answer.
Yeah, I probably would have handled that in a more vague way. But,
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, that was very interesting.
We'll see. I know that it's a joke out there, and I'm giggling whenever I hear it, but no promises. You know, there's not exactly a lot of unicorns running around in the DC universe right now, but
some people are deadly serious, I'm sure.
Oh, I know.
Yep, they are. Yep.
I know.
I've just
no answer on that one right now, but
I've just got a couple more questions I'd like to ask before we start wrapping things up, if that's okay.
Sure.
First one, going back to the DLCs and working with DC and the writers and stuff, was there any character or storyline from the comics or something that you really liked but you was told was absolutely off limits, you could never do it? Was there anything like that?
I'm so sorry, I lost about 10 seconds of sound there. Can you start again?
Yeah, I was just saying about, is there any particular character or storyline from the comics that you would really like to see in the game but you was told by DC, no, that's totally off limits?
No, there's really no character that they've said no, that's off limits to us on, that's inside the main DC canon that we've asked about. You know what I mean? They're really, really good about. Normally, when we first started, we actually had a specific list of characters that we could use in the game that were in the contract. We have long since broadened that out, and they just let us add stuff when we want to add stuff. I think we've done such a good job of adding stuff into the game that I have trouble at this point too answering that question without putting my production hat on and going, well, can I build it? You know, or what would I do to build that? That would be really tough. But is there one that I don't know. I don't think so. I think pretty much I've put all the characters that I know and love from the game into the game, or coming to the game. You know, like we've got New God stuff coming down the line, so that's really cool. We're doing a 3-part trilogy for Lantern lore DLCs, so you can imagine that there are more things coming down the road right there. I mean, for example, here, I don't think I mentioned this, but we've got 2 new legends coming with DLC 9 War of the Light. Can you guess who they are?
Saint Walker?
Yes, Saint Walker is one of them.
Atrocitus?
Yes! Saint Walker and Atrocitus. So they're coming with DLC 9.
Nice.
So I see characters like that already coming into the game, and so it's a tough question for me to answer because I feel like we've done so much. I have to be honest with you. If there was one character I would like to do more with, if I could make a DLC, like here's an impossible DLC that I do not believe we could ever make. Right? Just because the way I would want to pay it off, I don't think we could actually accomplish it. And in the amount of time that it takes for us to make a DLC. But I would love to do like a Bizarro world. I would love to do like Bizarro JLA and Bizarro Society and have this Bizarro world with this messed up metropolis. There was this Action Comics that Jeff Johns wrote that was so hilariously funny to me and awesome. And I loved it so much. And I would love to do a Bizarro world, get more Bizarro in there. But it's probably why we did Bizarro for the iconic Anomaly, because it was just I really love that character. I would love to do more Mixie. Like I would love to do this awesome off the wall wild kind of DLC with him and get him just out of that St. Patty's content and into a more major featured role. But I would love to do an Aquaman trilogy of DLCs if I wasn't Aquaman and feel really weird about doing an Aquaman trilogy when I'm Aquaman. It just feels so narcissistic, I can't even stand it. So, but those are probably my top 3 things I wish I could do. What about you, Mepps? What about you?
What DLC
and don't
would
say
I do?
that, Mepps. No, well, what character would you want to see added to the game?
Well, added or expanded? I'd love to see more Birds of Prey.
Yeah. Well, which in particular?
More Hunters
Which version?
and Black
like
Canary.
Hawk
Actually, I'd like to. No. I would like to
Penguin
see Oracle. I want to see Oracle in game. I want to walk up to her and talk to her.
I'm with you on that one.
Okay.
She's probably super complicated.
Calculator stuff would be cool. Calculator's brilliant as well in this game. I think that would be a really interesting thing to do.
I'd like all the Batgirls.
Yeah, he is fun. I like Ambush Bug too. Ambush Bug's funny. Batgirls, huh? All of them? Cassandra.
Well, Stephanie.
Kane.
Yes.
That's not your favorite though, is it? Who's your favorite?
No.
Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie. I figured.
Yeah, probably Stephanie.
Do you like the new return of Barbara Gordon?
I do. I miss Oracle, but I like the return of Barbara, and I feel bad wishing someone's in a wheelchair. So
you're mean. Well, she focuses on that a little too much for me in the initial comics. She's always worried she's like gonna hurt herself again, so
yeah, it was kind of never really well explained. Just like, how did you get better, and what happened, and were you ever like, it just kind of skipped over that, and let's go on. And it's gotten, I think it's been pretty strong all along and gotten really good recently. So
what was your other question? I interrupted you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, in the initial media for the game building up to the game's release, we saw and heard a lot about dynamic events happening in Metropolis and stuff. Like, you could be a villain and you'd come in and cause havoc in Metropolis, and maybe some of the heroes, the NPCs, would fly in and see what's going on, and you'd be able to fight them and stuff. I mean, is anything like that going to be still happening at some point?
Well, I never was happy with how the incidental encounters, like the dude who's like standing up by the satellite dish, or the person by the ATM, or the guy standing on the edge of the ledge that like jumps off the ledge when you go down. Like, none of that felt very heroic. It all just felt very like weird and kind of last minute to me. So actually, a few months ago, before DLC 9 was fully ramping up for production, and when we were trying to wrap up, we actually started DLC 9 for what we call a sprint, which is a certain amount of weeks of time that we do a development, then we do a check-in, then we plan our next sprint, and there's a certain number of sprints in the DLC cycle. But we actually did a little bit of a sprint and planning for getting ready for DLC 9, and then the case was made to actually treat PS4 more like a relaunch and go back and address some of the feedback that the community's given us in terms of the progression, design, general bugs, and things that we weren't satisfied with in terms of the immersion of the environment, all the changes that went into GU31 and everything in the days leading up to PS4. And I actually had this designer working on redoing all that incidental content and making it feel more like what I think we initially had envisioned. So he's got like bank heists and jewelry store heists and things like that, and you can kick it off as a hero or a villain. And what we were going to do is we actually have like, you know, Titanic Trenton and Iron Curtain end up working with the cops or the robbers that are going on here, and they show up and you can fight them. And we actually have Iconics coming in once in a while when at the end of that as well, which is more of a rare encounter. So we want to get that system in. We're just waiting on some technology for these encounter markers that don't work the same way with this Hatcher content than they do with the episode content. So once we get that, we can put these things in there and actually, I think, do a little overhaul on that anemic, you know, kind of go fight some crime, and you know, you have a mission that you do to actually complete X number of those types of encounters in the cities, and you'll get these rewards for it. And it just never felt compelling. Like I said, they felt very anemic. So we've gone back and tried to improve those a little bit to kind of get back to our initial thinking on that in regards to the initial question you asked.
Awesome. Well, that's all I've got for the moment. Have you guys got anything else to add? Tess and Rob?
One thing, I don't expect to get much out of this, but I believe you mentioned recently in a random forum post, we might be potentially seeing some changes to the controller role in the future. Have you got anything more for us on that?
Yeah, actually, right before we launched, controllers were not power batteries. They were actual CC experts. You know, you were encasing people and bubbling people up, and you know, really, the reason it was called a controller was because you were controlling things. And then there was sort of a moment when, you know, our game director at the time really had a crisis of conscience in terms of you know, having more of a power battery in there, and the whole thing got revamped to be a little more of a traditional iron triangle. And Tunso has been lamenting that for a very, very, very long time. And finally, we're making some moves to kind of get back toward. I think you know, power replenishment will always be there in some form or another. It would be too disruptive at this point to get rid of that altogether. But we do want to make it, just like we're actually adding the counters to the bosses so that weapon combos become more of a factor in those encounters. We want CCing to become more of a factor again too. We want people to be less of a power battery and more you know, of a controller again. So no specific comments on that or a date and time, but do know that it is something we're very passionate about changing.
That's very interesting looking to the future then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just more fun, right? I mean, I really get sick of it when, you know, you get these DPS guys out there that just think you're there to just fuel their scoreboard. And it's just not what we intended at all.
I know a couple of those DPS.
Oh yeah?
Two of them are in this channel.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's not like the game. I say that with a bit of disdain, but I certainly don't condemn anyone for doing that right now, because that is how the game is built right now. But it definitely wasn't what we had initially envisioned when we actually named it a controller. We might have been named it like a battery, you know, tank, healer, battery, if we had initially intended it to be that way. So I think when you're playing controllers and challenges, and you know, you're really doing all of this lockdown and CC stuff, it's so much fun. And then you get into a raid and all of that disappears, and your entire gameplay experience changes. It's the same. I mentioned the counter mechanics, because when you're a melee guy or you're a tank, you're really kind of relying on that kind of stuff to, you know, keep yourself active and not just be a turtle tank and block and shield all the time, but to actually, you know, get in there and fight. And that helps that. So we're definitely looking at that in terms of controllers. I think there'll be some compelling movement in the other direction. I'm not going to say it's going to wholesale. The needle's just going to spike to the other, or the, you know, ship's going to lilt to the other side. It won't go completely, but it will be better, I think.
Cool. So I think that just about covers all the questions from us, but is there anything that you guys would like to ask us as Odyssey?
Yes, there is. What would you like to see expanded with the base systems? Because you guys do these cool videos, these the DCUO cribs that you do. So what would you like to see other than sitting in a chair? Don't give me the sitting in the chair. I know you want to sit in the chair. What would you like to see kind of added and taken advantage of in the base system?
I think for me personally, I mean, I'm probably one of the laziest people when it comes to bases, but it'd be nice to be able to put extra rooms onto your base, maybe, or have annexes, secret passages, that sort of thing. Maybe extra modules that could be added onto a base. Or being able to rearrange the layout of the base itself, the actual fundamental layout.
Yeah, the layout was tough. We initially wanted PvE content in there too, and we will get to that at some point. I promise you. When Halls of Power come out, it's gonna use the base system to get PvE in there. But we did this thing with the cameras, and that definitely, made us kind of stick toward one base layout. And we had intentions about packups and moving your base and all these kind of things that went into the constraints of the time we had to make the decorating system and stuff. But you notice those alcoves where the amenities are, those are actually intended to be additions that we could put onto the bases. So that's not an unreasonable request, and I know the environment artists were interested in doing that too. So cool. All right, that's good to know.
Armories are doing one of the things that I always wanted, which was to be able to put up your armor suits in your base. I think that was something that a lot of people would have liked to see, and obviously that's coming, so looking forward to seeing that. Right
around the corner in January at some point, so I'm really looking forward to that too.
Soon,
TM. Yes. Let's see here. What else do I want to ask you? Question while I think of another.
Slightly related to the bases, and this is again on our video aspect. The camera mode that you can kind of go into when you're in your base, and obviously you get your nodes popping up then. And things,
I lost you guys. Sorry, I lost you guys right after in related to our video.
The camera mode that you can go into with the bases shows that there is some functionality to do that. We've obviously used various camera tricks and external programs to get rid of UI and try and emulate cameras for our videos, but is there the potential for getting that in general for the game, some kind of spectator mode or camera mode for the players to be able to use?
That's on our radar. We we have this thing, Player Direct, where people can make videos. But right now, it's like hard to make machinima kind of stuff like you guys do. And you can see Mepps and I on FNL. We're doing this sort of God cam and following people around and things like that. Yeah. So we certainly have the ability. I definitely think that once we get into I'd love to do a tournament mode for PvP one day and allow spectators to go in there and check stuff out. As long as when we're doing it, we actually can collide with people, and so right now it could be used in nefarious ways for sure. So that's why it sort of hasn't been released.
It is not a refined
tool.
Nice it's kind of hacked
stuff's
together.
Going on. Yeah, definitely. But it's something we would love to do because I want people to make better videos like you guys are saying, like you guys do, and be able to have, low angle camera shots and things like that, and to be able to maybe even monkey with the FOV and do kind of interesting things. So it's something that Captain Liberty and I have talked about a lot, getting a spectator mode in there. I would love to do it. One of the things that fascinates me these days is how far sports broadcasting has come. I don't know if you guys watch American football, but there's some interesting stuff that they do in there, with just the first down line, when that was one of the most innovative things in sports broadcasting that's happened in decades. And then from there, they've actually taken it, you can watch a dude scampering down the field, and they've got actual, little dots appearing behind him, so you can see exactly where he ran on the field. They can tag people so that you can see their name, and that little circle like follows them around. They're doing different camera angles. I was watching the America's Cup just recently, and oh my gosh, that was amazing. They actually had telemetry like up on the mass of the ship, and then they'd go to this view from a helicopter, and based on the GPS technology of where they've been, they actually like a real-time view of San Francisco Bay with all the information about where the boats were, what the wind speed was. You watch NASCAR or some kind of Formula One racing, and they're showing all the telemetry of the guys coming around the corner, and like all five cars are showing how fast they're going, their fuel levels. I mean, everything. It's crazy. And I would love for SOE to, do something like SOE Emote, but do it for like broadcasting, and allowing people who want to do, broadcasts of tournaments like Super Patriot or something like that. He could get in there and actually have, a commentator mode where he could get in an analyst mode and actually, back stuff up and, put telemetry on and information on things. It's just so fascinating how much innovation and technology is going into that in sports. And I would like to see some of that coming over into games.
So was there any other questions you had for us?
Oh, I don't know. Did you have one, Mepps?
I'm drawing a blank. I don't know. I feel bad.
How do you guys like the new styles that I just tweeted? Are you want more flex suits?
I prefer flex suits to the armor suits. I think we've had too many armor suits. I think a nice balance of both is good.
All right, fair enough.
I really like in the Green Lantern one though, and finally having that Green Lantern symbol on your chest and being able to wear it is awesome. Apart from the jumper that drops in the vault.
Got it. Yeah, the t-shirts.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know if I have many more questions. I feel hoarse and a little talked out. I've done myself
Nice.
in there.
Hey, we did it. Nice job.
It's been a long one. Pretty great.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate being able to come on here with Mepps and talk to you guys about stuff.
Yeah, as I said before, we're honoured and humbled to have you here. Really glad that the chat was able to be so candid, and you've revealed so much to us. It's blown our minds. It's blown my mind a little bit. I'm really psyched to see Cyborg Superman in the game at some point soon.
Yeah, Hank Henshaw, he's super cool.
But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an awesome interview. And from myself, Flame, Tess and Rob, we'd like to say thank you. I'm not sure what else to say now.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks for having
guys.
us on.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
take care.
And have a good Christmas.
Yeah, very Merry
you
Christmas
too.
to you both.
Happy Christmas, right?
Happy Christmas, yeah.
All right, cheers.
Thanks guys. Have a good one.